It's just women's cycles. So you're essentially syncing your lifestyle and your exercise with your cycle. I would say it's just pretty much a more advanced version of listening to your body. But it kind of like gives you permission to listen to your body. You think, oh my gosh, of course I'm tired. No wonder I don't want to work out today, or no wonder I don't want to go and do a run. I want to do some low impact Pilates, or no wonder I feel like eating more, or, I need to be resting, or I feel great. I could do 2 workouts today, but last week I couldn't. So yeah, essentially there's 4 phases of the cycle, and every single one of them, there's different hormones. Your hormones change so much. So you can kind of sync how you're eating and how you're exercising just to make you feel better, and can help you have less painful periods, just manage those hormones a lot better.
What happens when you blend the spirit of wild adventure with the precision of Pilates? You get Laura Mohi. She's part Maori, she's part nomad, and she's fully committed to building strength, stability, and awareness in those she works with. Laura speaks with us about her early days and her interest in physio, all the way through to the rise as a Pilates powerhouse. She shares about cycle syncing and so much more. I'm sure you'll enjoy this episode. If it's your first time joining us, welcome. If you've joined us before and you enjoy these episodes, you really can help us to do more by taking a moment to subscribe or follow. Really allows us to bring more incredible guests just like Laura. Enjoy. All right, Laura Mohi, welcome to Adventures in Wellbeing.
Thank you so much, Damian.
Yeah, I think if there was one person I could imagine that is the poster child for adventures in well-being, it might be you. You're living this life of traveling and sharing Pilates, and I know I drool as I follow along and, your adventures in all these beautiful places. I thought I might just chat a little bit about the beginning of this adventure you've been on for a while. So take us back. Okay, so young Laura walking into her first class, studio, I assume.
Yeah.
What was it in perhaps those first Pilates experiences that grabbed you? What was Pilates doing? How did you feel? Like, bring us back into that.
Yeah, well, that was probably about 12, 13 years ago now. I wanted to be a physio, and I had just ended uni and was doing some personal training in between just to have a little break from study. And I wanted to do some Pilates classes just to get a little bit more understanding about the core. I had a lot of post-natal clients, lots of female clients. So I really wanted to learn a lot more about that. So I started to do some Pilates classes, and thankfully the gym I worked at had a fully equipped Pilates studio. So I did some classes there, fell in love with it, and was actually, I'm just going to go all in on this and do as much training as I can. I already had a bit of fitness background, so it just really landed really well. There was a lot of the cues and a lot of the instructions. So I was thinking all of my clients should be hearing these cues when they are working out. So yeah, that was 13 years ago now, and then I moved on into my journey with Pilates.
And, if you take, say, a physio visit, right? Um, Maybe a bit more clinical, a bit more kind of resolution oriented. I think just as a bit of a stereotype, I think about my visits to a physio, some manual manipulations perhaps, and then sort of assignment of exercises typically, maybe it's kind of a traditional physio visit versus a Pilates session, you know, elegant strength building, balancing, a more class format, the practice is built into the class.
Yeah.
Do you get a sense of what it is that combo kind of offers people that is?
I think it was completely different from what I wanted to do with physio. So I just really liked that tie into the fitness world, but also it's really focused. You're really having to think about which muscles are working. And like I say, there was just so many clients that had already seen that could benefit from doing something in a class format. So a lot of people don't have the time or the money to go and do a lot of one-on-one or clinical work. So it was just a really great way to people feel like they could still get a workout, but tie in some really great principles like core strength, posture, all of the good stuff, really.
Yeah. Do you, if you were to kind of maybe generalize a little bit, the people, particularly within the studio format, when people are coming in, what are the main things that are drawing people to Pilates? What are they trying to solve?
Yeah, that's really interesting. It's a lot of the time you'll have someone coming say, I'm doing a lot of other stuff and I want to do Pilates mostly for some core strengthening. And that will be the first line they have. And as soon as they get started and as soon as you work with them, they do realize it's a lot more than that. And they are going to get a lot of posture, a lot of flexibility, a lot of just support around the joint. So, they're working their glutes to work on their leg alignment. But a lot of people will be interested in it first and foremost because of the core, because it is so targeted. Yeah. So that is quite common.
A kind of an aesthetic interest in core, like I just want to I want to look like Laura kind of thing? Or
there's a bit of a 50-50. Some people just want to really like that toning aspect and they want to, they want to do some core strengthening and maybe some glutes. But then there's also, that demographic that's got really bad back or, the back pain is just debilitating, that they will want the core, which is, so important just to support them and help them move through their day. So, and even the people who do start kind of for an aesthetic reason, it's quite cool to see them really understanding the posture then gets better. Everything gets better. You can perform better. So yeah, sometimes it starts that way, which is interesting. And that's fine. People are allowed to have those goals. It's great. But it's really great if you can tie in some other really good benefits as well.
Yeah. I mean, I think here at aroha, a lot of people come, as, certainly one of the motivations is I want to drop some weight or I want to kind of get this physical reset going. And I think they often find so much more. And for me, in my Pilates journey, I studied Stott. I did my level 1 teacher training in Stott. So you and I have a little bit of tiny bit of overlap
some of the
there.
cues.
Yeah. But what I remember was at the time I was doing a ton of yoga and really working on flexibility. And I remember feeling almost a little bit of instability in my joints. And I think certainly the yoga that I was doing wasn't potentially focused enough on stability and was really focused on flexibility. And I remember that just in that training from Stott, that solved that problem. That sensitivity in my low back went away. And I know that in Stott, what I remember was that it was the training anyways that I did was very kind of almost like hyper detail oriented.
Oh, it's so technical, right?
It's so technical, yeah.
And everything is tied in. You're cueing the head position when you're working the glutes. It's really cool to see how it all does tie in. And a lot of people do need more stability. The combo is great, stability and flexibility. But you'll see that with the clients here as well. It's a lot of people would benefit from a lot more stability in the body.
Yeah. And so what is there a time when, let's say you're seeing a client and they come in and they might have an injury or something like that, that you say, actually, what would be great for you is to do a series of 5 sessions kind of one-on-one to really kind of, take care of this or that?
When I had the studios, it was very much, some people would absolutely need a few privates. And that was quite a good way if people weren't super interested in it. They probably didn't want to pay for a one-on-one. So they would usually start doing some classes and then you can pick up on a few imbalances or maybe just, they weren't quite understanding what you were talking about with the core or the class format didn't work for them. So that's a great position to then get people into doing a few privates first, just to really pick up on what they could be getting more out of the class. Yeah, so that was a great way to do it. Would always try to get people in for a few privates. In an ideal world, you'll get people starting with privates and then moving into classes for sure.
And privates, you can be much more kind of clinical, I guess, or
absolutely just
object-oriented.
What is not working for their body and what muscles we should be strengthening for their body, or even just, like I say, in a class, if you're not quite understanding it when you're working with someone one-on-one, you work until the cue works or they genuinely understand what you mean in their body. Yeah, which is huge because then they apply that and they think about it every time they do a workout at home or they do a class.
Yeah. And I remember that, particularly with spine, it felt like Pilates was so effective, potentially the most effective movement form I've found for rehabilitating spine. Is it equally good? I guess I haven't had any experiences with knees or shoulders or.
That's a good point. Spine is a huge focus because even when we're doing the setups, it's the pelvis placement and it's the, the upper back, the thoracic placement with all of the moves and just that whole strengthening around that entire trunk and the deep core to support that. But equally, there's a lot of runners that I work with or a lot of even professional athletes that the knee alignment is even more important for them. So that's all glutes, lower abs, keeping that knee in line when they are running, when they're doing stuff. And exactly the same with the shoulder. That shoulder blade just moves all over the place. So we need to be strengthening up and targeting everything around there. So it's very similar to the spine. It's strengthening those smaller muscles that support those joints just so you can actually perform better and feel better.
Yeah.
So very similar, yeah.
I mean, I get the sense that even so, when we're in a class in a group setting, and I love the mix of like tough love and humor that you deliver. It's really enjoyable.
I'm happy to hear that.
I find myself grimacing but loving it.
Perfect.
And yeah, perfect. But I guess it seems to me that these sequence of movements are actually really safe and easily adaptable. There's something that's really approachable even in a class format.
Yeah, I really actually enjoy taking these classes here at Aroha because it's not often that you'll have a group this size, so about 20, where you'll have at least 4 who've never tried Pilates before. You will have you'll have some other Pilates instructors in the class. You'll have a few people who've booked the retreat because Pilates is their main thing they love. So it is quite cool to see the different varying levels. And then it's also awesome to see one move with strengthening the glutes and the core. There's 5 modifications that I can run you through, and every single person is getting something out of it and tailoring it back so they're not getting into the wrong muscles. And yeah, it's just really cool to mix up that kind of tie in the fitness. They're getting a workout, but you can tailor it back and make sure you're doing everything correctly. And yeah.
Do you think that's why, I mean, we've continued to see this rise of Pilates? And I was even just before our chat, I was interested in seeing, what are there any statistics on this rise? Because it seems like Pilates really is kind of having a wave, or really kind of
last few years, right? Like I remember I've been an instructor for 13 years, so it was quite interesting. At the start of my career, it was very much explaining on a daily basis what the difference between Pilates and yoga was, multiple times a day trying to explain what a reformer was. Whereas now, just in general conversations in the last 5 years or so, everyone knows what a reformer is. There is no chat about what the difference between yoga and Pilates is because people are happily doing both. And then even in the last few years, I've really seen that step up. And I think it's just great for people to realize it's either injury prevention and maybe they're doing it that for, or pre and post-natal. A lot of my friends are going through that stage in life now, and it's huge for that reason. But yeah, just I think there's also been a huge rise in the reformer as well, which has been crazy all over the world how popular that's been. But great to see people getting in and just focusing on different muscles as well.
I wonder if, so Joseph Pilates developing this kind of, early 20th century and, kind of through that World War I period. But I know that there's also, he didn't copyright or kind of lock down the method or kind of, he left it open essentially. So I know that it's evolved and it's, I guess, been integrated with various forms of therapeutics and kind of modern movement. Do you think, I guess, stop being one of those, right?
Oh, absolutely. There's a whole bunch of different schools that have come out that have kind of trained under Joseph Pilates, and then have, with new developments and learning more about the body and learning more about the bone structure, it has developed slightly. And I think that's quite cool to see how it can evolve and see how it works in people's bodies these days. But there's a few kind of big schools, and it's all, I think it's quite cool how it has kind of evolved.
Like in yoga, I know that if you study, if you just go to an ashram, in India or something like that, and you're just doing kind of ashram yoga, it can be a bit loose around the edges, and certainly from, say, an alignment standpoint or some of the perspectives, for older bodies, that aren't used to moving.
Oh my gosh, aging populations. Yeah, Pilates is just a dream.
A dream, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Is there anything from, and I don't know how much of kind of classical Pilates you have experience with, but is there anything that you know of from classical Pilates that you wouldn't teach anymore?
Not really. I think when I did my training up through Stop Pilates and kind of mirrored you, and then I had my personal trainer background and my fitness background, I'd kind of always picked the movements that I know had worked in my clients' bodies from the start. I think I was in a really lucky position because I was already working with clients on a daily basis when I did my Pilates training in a PT basis. So it was quite easy to see which ones like I wouldn't be taking through. But I think, there is a whole classical world that love all of those moves, and I think people have evolved and kind of cut a few out, or maybe people stick with it. But for me, it was always what works in my clients' bodies and what's actually going to really help them out is what I have always focused on, personally anyway.
Yeah, very cool. Let's see, you touched on pre and postnatal Pilates. I have a pregnant wife at the moment, so this is a very interesting topic for me.
She was actually in the class yesterday and she absolutely killed it.
Yeah.
And modifications, she was all over it. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit more about.
It's just such a game with aging populations and pre and postnatal. It's such a dream combination because you're already getting more flexible. The hormones are pumping through your body, that you're getting more flexible, your joints are getting more flexible. That stability is such an important aspect. So you imagine everything is loosening up around the hips, and then your lower back has to really kick in and try to take all of that support for the pelvis. So if we can strengthen, especially the glutes or the surrounding muscles, that can take some of that lower back pain out of there. You're working on the posture with all of the changes in the body, as you can imagine. There is some core strengthening, some deep core strengthening. And yeah, it's really just keeping the legs strong, as well as just supporting all of those changes in your body. You're also preparing for birth, you're preparing for postnatal. So yeah, it's huge, and it's very popular with prenatal clients. A lot of my really good friends have kind of gone through that stage. They have 1 to 2 kids now, and just having to stop what you were doing, and then kind of, do I just stop doing everything, when this is actually, you need to be preparing your body for this amazing thing it's about to go through. So it's just a really safe form of exercise, which is exciting for people because they're not too sure what to do. And it's just taking the pain out of your body and giving you some strength to get you through what's coming up. And also, it's a long 9 months, as you know, the pregnant wife, right? It's that support you need. And then equally the same postpartum. It's rebuilding the core, improving some core strength, improving the posture muscles. You're going to be doing breastfeeding, you're holding a baby. And we just need to look after the mum as well, right? Because it's just been 9 months of huge changes in the body. Yeah, but that stability and strength focused in those areas is why Pilates is quite popular with the pre and postnatal.
I can see that, having that foundation of just strength and balance through the body, and, joints that are healthy would be amazing. Is there anything, let's say somebody's just kind of YouTubing Pilates videos, they're pregnant at home, as you move through pregnancy and the belly is growing and there's this kind of real kind of opening and stretching of the abdominal area, do's and don'ts around, particularly don'ts maybe around there.
Yeah.
And then also interested in the post part, because that seems really interesting.
Yeah, there are, sometimes we can focus solely on the don'ts, but the thing I always said to my prenatal clients is there's so much you can be doing and you should be doing to build strength as well. So at first, it's kind of trying not to focus too much on the don'ts, but there definitely are some modifications. So there is so much to do, and especially trying to keep that positive mindset. Otherwise, everything just gets scary, and if you're not strengthening, that's actually going to be much harder for you. But from that second trimester, that's when there is just so much growth in that, the belly is stretching. There's a lot of pressure going into the body. So what we mostly want to do is avoid lying directly flat on your back. So all of those supine or all of those movements you would normally doing lying flat on your back, we're propping you up so you have your heart just a little bit higher than the baby, and that ties into not cutting off any oxygen flow as you get further along. So it's just a really great safe practice to bring the heart above the belly. So imagine instead of lying directly flat on your back, you can prop yourself up on your elbows, or you would have a Pilates ball behind your lower back. There's also a point, of course, that lying on the belly is no longer comfortable or no longer safe. So you would be doing everything up into a 4-point kneeling position. We're not overstretching as you start getting into having all of those hormones pumping through your body. So we don't stretch so much that you're really stretching the ligaments too much and getting into the joints. So it's just a little bit more controlled, making sure you're hydrated and, not doing anything that's going to increase the risk of falling. But if we can strengthen the legs, that is so amazing. I have this amazing physio, and she was saying if you ever have a Pilates client and a prenatal client, they're not too sure, it's just really work their legs, really work their glutes. And it's just all of those muscles that are going to be super safe. Lots of side lying work is amazing because you don't have to worry about the positions you're in. But most of all, just that lying flat on your back, lying flat on your belly is what we want to cut out. Doing a whole bunch of rotation. You could do a little bit, but following a program where your pre and postnatal is huge, so you can focus on the right things. I always say with my online clients, there's a reason I suggest the pre or postnatal. It's not just that they're safe, it's also they're chosen because they are going to help you out. And you need the posture work, you need the glute strength.
Mm-hmm. Is there anything, I know that postnatal, particularly rectus abdominis is kind of knitting itself back together, and there's this potential of almost a split that can happen.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that and I love that Pilates does this core sitting at the waist, right?
Yeah,
where you're
it's
transfers.
it's that transverse abdominis wrapping around, especially if there is some ab separation, which is super common and absolutely understandable, right? So it's rather than doing a whole bunch of crunch movements when you're postnatal, we're trying not to get you working that really superficial six-pack muscle that can increase that ab separation. That's not really what you're focused on. It's It's the deeper core, that transverse abdominis that does wrap around like a corset around your entire torso. And that's protecting the back, and that's also kind of knitting everything back together just to support you, especially when you're having to bend down and pick up the baby. If we can get some strength around there, that is going to be the best thing to rebuild the core strength. But yeah, avoiding those movements where it's big, huge crunch movements that are mostly going to be focusing on the six pack, which then, of course, can increase the separation.
And is there a different sense of frequency? Like, of course, you can probably do Pilates every day if you want.
Yeah,
Is there any
it's a great question. So really in terms of pre and postnatal, you're meaning?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, prenatal is really depending on how you're feeling, right? There'll be times where you're not doing anything and you're absolutely shattered, and there'll be times where if you're feeling okay, it's absolutely safe to be doing Pilates all the time. Prenatal, but postpartum really depends what kind of birth you've had, how your recovery's going, how your separation is. So always recommend seeing a women's health physio, and if you've been cleared to exercise, then it's just starting slowly. You wouldn't want to absolutely smash the core every day, for example. You'd start 2 or 3 sessions a week until it's slowly building up, or you'd do core and the next day you'd be focusing mostly on glutes, because if you imagine the core muscles haven't really worked for 9 months, they're going to need some time to build up. Which is hard because people will remember what they did before they were pregnant, and try jump into that. But it's just looking after yourself, and you'll be able to feel it.
Steady. Yeah, I do get that from tuning into Anna, is that if she's listening, like there are little moments where she's like, oh, that I shouldn't have done.
Absolutely not. Yeah.
But if she's just listening and not pushing, which she doesn't seem to do,
it's crazy though, because it's just
guides itself.
It changes week by week.
Yeah.
As well. That's what's tough when you're pregnant. It's stuff changes every few weeks. It's what was good last week may not be good this week, So it's really is just an intense level of looking after your body and listening to yourself.
Cool. Pilates has some really cool toys.
Oh yeah, it does.
Built into
it does.
Do you have opinions or thoughts about, or any interesting anecdotes or stories about working with some of these devices?
All of the equipment.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a really interesting one, because nowadays, like I say, I even get people asking me, can you do Pilates without the reformer or without the Cadillac? And Pilates was first of all designed on the mat, and the equipment was there to help people get into the moves and to support you a little bit more. And it has kind of moved into a bit more of the fitness world where people can get a bit more of a workout with the springs on the reformer. But when I had the studios, I had reformer studios, and yeah, people absolutely love it. I think it was a great way to get people into it who maybe saw Pilates on the mat as like a bit of a stretch out, which it, as you know, absolutely is not. It was a good way to get them in to kind of think, okay, and then they're working their legs, they're working their arms, and then tying in the Pilates principles that way. I haven't done a huge amount of work with the Cadillacs and the barrels, and those are all of the big one that looks like a big hospital bed with the fuzzy straps and stuff. So I've done all of my training in that, but the studios was just a bit more accessible to get everyone on the reformer. So I haven't had any crazy flipping over backwards on the Cadillac stories or anything. There was always a few exercises on the reformer that, as an instructor, you kind of just check the coordination levels of the class before you've got people kneeling on the long box doing the leg and the straps type thing. So thankfully, no serious injuries for me when I've been taking classes. But I've actually been solely teaching on the mat for the last 3 years now, because I've moved solely to teaching online. And yeah, I've kind of fallen in love with the mat Pilates again, because I had been teaching when I had my studios for about 7 years on the reformer mostly. Absolutely love the reformer, but the mat is just so great. There's no kind of cheating your way through it without thinking about the posture and the core. And then, you add the Pilates ball or some little weights, and it really feels like a whole body workout on the mat, which is quite cool, much more accessible. So there's a place for everything, the really crazy looking bits of equipment. But I think when sometimes people think of that in the side of the physio room and it looks a little bit daunting, there's so much you can get from mat as well, just mat Pilates.
Yeah. I mean, I know for me, I have to get in my car, drive down to the studio, just that, call it 20, 30 minutes to get there and 20, 30 minutes to get back. I noticed that that's actually a significant barrier for me. And so at this point, I almost always practice at home. I love community. Like I love going into a studio. I went into Melbourne, and we can chat about this in a little bit, and we did this kind of quite a modern fusion of Pilates. But yeah, I mean, I guess there's value in both, but for me, like online.
Oh, there's so much value in both. And if you haven't done anything like that before, there's great value in going to go see an instructor in person and getting them to check everything out. But Just the accessibility for people at home. It's you almost need 2 hours when you're getting somewhere. You get into the studio, you're doing the hour class. So, and I saw that with all of my clients, people trying to find car parks and new markets. So it's been really cool to see that people can kind of roll out of bed 30 minutes and they're in the shower.
Yeah.
Pre-postnatal, or mums at home with young kids, that they're not getting out of the house for 2 hours, whereas they could get out for they could get on the mat for 20, 30 minutes.
Yeah, and the baby might be there.
Oh, mate, they're on there. Yeah,
Yeah.
I get they're my favorite videos to get from online clients. It's like a mat, and they would have set up a cute little mat for their little toddler, but by the end of it, it's like the mat, the dog, the toddler, all on top while they're doing the little leg kicks, So it's cool to see people just getting what they can get done. It's, so important.
It's the way.
It's the way.
What do you think about some of these new, in New York, I went to a studio that was doing, it's kind of like power Pilates, and they have these different reformers and these different things. And then I was in Melbourne recently, and I did a practice where it was a reformer with your choice of rower or bike.
Oh my gosh, yes. Yeah, I've seen a few of those. Yeah. Attached on the reformer as well. There's a few of those. It's on the end of it. Yeah. There's a whole bunch. Yeah.
Yeah. Any thoughts or observations?
Yeah. Like I say, I'm really thankful that I started Pilates so long ago without getting kind of caught up into the new trends of it. I think I have a really good way just to kind of pick and choose what I like to do in terms of the new trends that come through. And there's always a place for that. Like, a lot of people, if they're trying to do more of a fitness workout and they're trying to improve their fitness, I think it can be a lot of fun, and they can also tie in some core. But at some point, there can be a lot of classes you do, and you kind of think there wasn't actually a lot of Pilates aspect in that at all. So it can be a little tricky, and they'll all have Pilates in the name. So, there's a lot coming through, and I think there always will be, but it's quite, I think if anyone's done a lot of Pilates, they realize they can separate the core, the cardio, for example, and do that another day or do that later in the day. And maybe when they're in the class, they want to be getting an hour of those Pilates principles. So I find with my clients and myself, I would rather go and focus solely on Pilates when I'm there and stay in that mindset, and then do my more high intensity work or some cardio separately. So yeah, I don't have too much of an opinion on it. It's kind of cool to see people getting out there and moving, as always. That is always my MO, get people moving, feeling good is the most important. But if you're really after those Pilates benefits, I think it's really great to focus on Pilates solely, and then you can do everything else separately.
You're a big fan of nature too, which fits you right into the aroha.
Oh my God, this is a dream week for me. It's like Pilates, nature ties into the wild. So yeah.
What do you do for yourself? Do you kind of maybe just in a normal work day when you're in your own flow?
Yep. So I just love, my main two forms of exercise are Pilates and walking. And also I tied in wild Pilates originally so I could, be doing the Pilates in nature. That is my dream form of movement. But I'm going to do a lot of filming in nature, so that's not actually super relaxing for me when I am filming. I'm more in work mode. But if I'm just kind of waking up and having a dream day for myself, it'll be some form of Pilates on the mat. So it'll either be at home or I'll walk somewhere and do it in nature. And then I love walking. So I really enjoy that low impact exercise. So yeah, the combination of the two, getting my Pilates done and then to tie in the nature, it's always a walk. I'll always walk at some point in the day. Doesn't need to be a huge walk. And it's just getting outside, usually not a podcast, just walking along the beach or walking to the beach. Really lucky to have just been in Bali until this week. So have been walking down in the mornings. Liam would be going surfing, so I'd go and meet him, watch him surf and then walk back. So yeah, nature's hugely important for me. So yeah.
Do you guys, so I'm picturing living in Bali, you're kind of living my dream life. Liam now has my dream body.
Well, Liam's getting more traction than me. It's hilarious. Yeah. He's doing so well.
Well, surfing.
The surfing, everything's into CrossFit, Pilates, of course.
Yeah. What's it? Tell me a little bit about the normal week. Of course, you guys have lots of health and wellness going on. Is there what's the fun bits of Bali? Like, is there an edge over there?
So it's been, this was always the dream, right? Like I worked so hard in the studios for 8 years when I had those, and it was, imagine if we could have something where I was teaching Pilates online still, and we were living, we wanted to live. So, so I've been doing that full time for 2 years now. We did Europe last year for 6 months, and then back home for summer in New Zealand because it works so well. I do this kind of stuff and the events and kind of give back to online members, do free events and stuff. And then we escape the New Zealand winter and we can film outside because it's, as you know, super important for us to tie in that wild and the nature, which is quite hard to do in winter here. And anyway, that's my justification for traveling. So,
Yeah.
we left and we just done 6 months, and it's just the routine, which is amazing. So daily life was literally the dream morning routine you could ever think of. So we'd wake up early, and it would be either Elaine would check the surf and either go for a surf, or he would go to CrossFit if the waves weren't great. I would either walk him to the gym, or I would go down to the beach with him and then do my nature walk, and then either do Pilates at the beach or when I got home, 20, 30 minutes. And then we would would usually meet at a coffee shop and do a little bit of a plan for work for the day. There was always some really cool people doing some really inspiring businesses. So you'd be chatting to some really inspiring people out of the coffee shops, and then we'd hit our work in the middle of the day when it was hot. So 4 or 5 hours, we'd get all of our work done. We got really productive because you're kind of motivated to get to the beach at the end of the day, And we were down in Uluwatu, so it just felt like a crime to not hit the sunset every night. So yeah, normally about 4 or 5, you'd be straight down to the beach, and there were so many beaches to choose from, and you're just watching the sunset, petting all the dogs, cruising, and then, I just a really easy night, or I'd get a little bit of work done later if I needed to. But yeah, just prioritizing that morning routine and also evening as well. So
Have you guys been tuning into, I know Bali has quite the kind of, I guess, Buddhist centric, but also just kind of a spiritual scene, doesn't it? Lots of yoga,
it does. And
meditation.
you can kind of, we were more of like the surf culture scene down south, but you can pick it up with just the people who are there. Everyone's kind of there to really work on themselves and just be in a really good mindset. And even just, the general demeanor of all of the locals and everything is just so beautiful. So, and then I did a few yoga classes while I was there, more so than I would do at home. Usually predominantly Pilates. So it was really nice to tie in a little bit of that as well, because it's huge there.
Yeah.
Yeah, really cool.
Culturally, getting along with everyone is
everyone's just
seamless.
So friendly and so nice, all of the locals. And then, as you know, it's just a massive community of Australians and a lot of Euros there as well. So it was, I wouldn't say we did like a huge dive into like a complete cultural change. We were kind of going somewhere where you knew the waves were, we knew we could still work online and have good internet and all of that stuff, and have great places to film.
I was interested in looking at Joseph Pilates' early, stages of creating Pilates, that he was quite interested in Greco-Roman athletics and gymnastics, but also he was interested in Zen, and he even, studied yoga, a bit. And Pilates is listed as a mind-body exercise.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Carry on.
I guess I was just interested, like, where does all that stuff
Yeah, I
for you?
guess for me, rather than, I think when I do yoga, I really appreciate the spiritual side of things. Whereas where I'm coming from, it's more the mindfulness ties in by someone having to really think about their breath and really think about the alignment. So they're not kind of thinking about what's for dinner or what the person next to them is doing. So that's how the mindfulness ties in for me. It's very much someone's in the room. They don't think about everything else, what they've got on for work for the rest of the day, because you're not kind of on the spin bike zoning out and then doing your to-do list. You really think, I'm not going to be able to get up into this full roll-up unless I think about my pelvis position and I'm engaging the abs. So I really enjoy doing a lot of the kind of spiritual tie-ins, but I think even for me, coming from more of the fitness background and the Pilates background, you do find people having to be very mindful. So they call it an intelligent exercise, where people genuinely have to be aware of what they're doing. So that's another benefit of just working on your body, right? It's giving yourself that hour clear mind space, freeing your mind of everything else for an hour. Almost like a moving, somewhat of a meditation. If people who aren't familiar with meditation, I don't do a lot of meditation. I'm come more from that movement background. So it's a great way just to kind of, slow down the thoughts and just focus on moving your body.
Yeah. I mean, if you're feeling your body move and you're focused on your breath.
That is...
There you go.
Yeah, I remember all these things when I come into these amazing weeks here, It's great.
You were mentioning that you're part Māori. Of course, the last name Mohi.
Mohi, yeah.
Yeah.
I am.
Is there, what's that been like in that culture? And you were mentioning your father and...
Yeah, so my dad is Māori, so I'm half Māori. And I really like the tie-in to the Māori aspects here as well. And so, it's been interesting growing up. I feel like I grew up on the stage where it's very much more ingrained in the culture now, and, at schools and everything. It's a little bit more open. My dad didn't grow up in a nice time where they were open to and incorporating the culture into a lot of things. So it's been really interesting. And then seeing kind of how I've grown up and it's tied in a little bit, but not a crazy amount. And then now even seeing my younger sister and schools now just really embracing it, and all of my friends, they've got little kids who are amazing with their te reo, and it's they know all the words, and it's really tied into schools these days. So I think that's been really, really cool to see.
Have you gotten to be in some of, I guess, some of the traditional Maori experiences around, say, birth and death, and some of
Because the traditions there are just they just go so deep, which is awesome. But I haven't actually delved into it a lot. But maybe new stages of my life, would be amazing. Obviously tied into all of the tangis and stuff when any family members have died. It's a whole week thing, which has been it's really quite cool to see. But something I'm really motivated to learn more about. I imagine even if I had kids, that would tie in a lot more. It'll be something that's going to be, I think, going through me for the rest of my life for sure.
Yeah, cool. Is there something they do around childbirth that particularly?
Oh, I honestly don't. I think there's a lot maybe to do with like the placenta stuff, but I haven't looked into it too much. But I'm sure, there's like traditions and ceremonies and stuff with a lot of Māori culture. So I'm sure there would be.
Yeah.
Something to look into for sure.
Yeah. And what's on the horizon for you? Is there percolations? You and your husband work together.
Yeah, well, we haven't quite got the wedding out of the way, but we are engaged. So honestly, I actually just started calling him my husband for a while. So we'll just roll with that.
Pretty much, he's locked in.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly casual. We've got pretty much like a business together, like a house together. So we've been together a while. So yeah, we're working together. We pretty much I had the studios for 8 years, loved that in Auckland, and then we'd started talking about doing an online offering as well, just at first mostly to make it more accessible. And I had clients who would leave and then have kids and they couldn't come back, and it's quite expensive. So it was like there was a bit of an opportunity to kind of just get Pilates out to more people. And then I haven't done a lot of traveling. I kind of went straight from uni straight into the studios. Liam's done a lot of traveling with his snowboarding background, so it's always been a side that I wanted to explore a bit more. So we launched the online, and that went really well. And then we kind of thought, imagine if we could just do the online. Then we could travel, then we could grow it, we could tie in the wild and just get the most beautiful nature locations in the world, right? That's kind of the dream of what we're doing now. So can we travel, try some new cultures, and then also find the most beautiful backdrops for my online members? It's quite motivating for them as well, rather than a white wall. It's like, today we're here in Crete at the beach, or today we're here in Bali. Just something different to look at when you've got 20 minutes to escape life and do a workout. So for us, it's if we can continue to do that. We're currently doing about 6 months travel, 6 months back in New Zealand. So really important for us. I've got a lot of brand collaborations and brand events back here over summer. So that's been working really well for us. So next couple of years, absolutely 6 months traveling, new filming locations. And there's some really cool work stuff I've got coming up as well. I'm really enjoying all of the new programs I've got out there. Like I've got some really cool cycle syncing stuff. I've got a great big brand collaboration coming up. Lots of pre-coordinating. Oh yeah, I always just throw that out there as if everyone knows what that is now. But it's kind of had a bit of limelight over the last couple of years, which is so amazing because it just wasn't talked about. Like even myself, I've kind of only got into it the last couple of years. So
women's cycles.
It's just women's cycles. So you're essentially syncing your lifestyle and your exercise with your cycle. I would say it's just pretty much a more advanced version of listening to your body. But it kind of like gives you permission to listen to your body. You think, oh my gosh, of course I'm tired. No wonder I don't want to work out today, or no wonder I don't want to go and do a run. I want to do some low impact Pilates, or no wonder I feel like eating more, or, I need to be resting, or I feel great. I could do 2 workouts today, but last week I couldn't. So essentially there's 4 phases of the cycle, and every single one of them, there's different hormones. Your hormones change so much. So you can kind of sync how you're eating and how you're exercising just to make you feel better, and can help you have less painful periods, less, just manage those hormones a lot better. But most importantly, I found it helpful because I really push the workouts when I feel like doing it, and that's when I'm going to get more results anyway. And then when I need to be chilling that week before my period, I am. Like I'm just doing low impact Pilates. You always choose walking over running.
Walk us through that a little bit. So let's say I'm somebody who just bulldozes through my cycle and doesn't.
Yeah, okay.
Attention, what's a typical month look like, or should it look like in terms of exercise?
Well, I mean, when you say someone who bulldozes for your cycle, I think we all were, everyone I've talked to were like, oh my gosh, remember in our 20s and we used to just do HIIT classes every single day? So we all did it because we all didn't talk about it. So there's four phases of the cycle. The first one is menstruation, so day one of your cycle. That lasts for about a week or just under. And the first few days of your cycle, you're going to be, feeling a little bit sluggish. You might have cramps and everything, so you're kind of taking it a little bit easy. And towards the end of that, you're going to start getting all of those great hormones and getting some energy back in. So
really shouldn't be working out too much.
You actually can. It really depends. But a lot of people just have other period symptoms, like if you've got endo or you've got, just really bad cramps or so. For the first 2 or 3 days, we would take it pretty easy. So in our cycle slinger programs, the first 3 days are stretching, very low impact. You're avoiding core stuff, like you don't want to be crunching. So start of that. And then by about day 3 or 4, you're starting to really ramp up the energy and you move into the next phase, which is the follicular phase. And that's when you're feeling great. So you've got all of the hormones working through. They're actually going to get better results from your workouts as well. You don't usually feel like eating as much. You feel like just being really social, working out really hard. That's when you can build strength. So that's a great time you do all of the power Pilates classes, or if you're into running, you would, ramp up your running then. And the next phase, you move into ovulation. That's only a few days, but that's when you feel great. Like your skin's glowing, everything's good. You could do great strength workouts, like you're going to get amazing results then. You're super clear-headed, so that's a great time to, do any planning you've got to do. And then towards the end of the cycle, from about day 20, 21, you're in your luteal phase, which is the last phase, and that's kind of that week and a half before the next cycle starts. So before your period that you're really wanting to slow it down. So the hormones that really drop off. You genuinely need more calories to get through the days. You'll be eating more carbs, taking stuff like magnesium and, just resting when you need a rest. It's still great to work out, but if you can do some low impact stuff, because your body can't handle cortisol as well, the stress hormone. So if you're putting a lot of stress by doing HIIT workouts and running, you're just getting yourself even more stressed. Your body's just absolutely exhausted, and then that's what can lead into worse period symptoms as well. So it's crazy because that week that's the week that you feel like eating chocolate and then just going for a walk. And the great thing about learning more about your cycle is like, that's what you should be doing.
You should do.
Do that. That's amazing. And then I find it's great because when I get into those other phases where I'm feeling good, I really make the most of them. So, I don't really miss a workout in those days. I don't feel like missing a workout, but I really prioritize it because I know that I can later in the cycle, I just do whatever I need to do.
Also kind of interesting to think of, the cortisol that comes from exercise. It's the same cortisol that would come from an emotional stress or an argument with your partner.
Or like crazy work stress, I think.
Work stress.
Yeah, so it's lifestyle. If you can change a few lifestyle factors as well and taking yourself out of a lot of stress in your life as much as you can, that's obviously tough in everyday life. But sometimes even people don't associate exercise with putting a lot of stress on the body. So sometimes it can. And just being aware of it really and listening to your body is all that cycle syncing is. So that's been really cool to delve into that with my online members as well.
One of the more interesting perspectives I've heard recently around cycles, I was with a shaman in Costa Rica, and she was saying that you shouldn't do plant medicine when you're on your cycle, when you're menstruating.
Really?
Yeah, and but her take on it was that actually in the shamanistic view, of women's health, that the menstruation period is like a time of doing plant medicine, and that women should basically view it as a time to go inside and kind of, be with aspects of the self and kind of, turn it and maybe do journaling or do kind of any sort of work that just allows you essentially to kind of, I guess the way I grasp it was like things are coming up during that period,
And you need to be giving yourself the time to journal and work through them. And it's a great time to actually go inside and think about all the stuff that your body wants you to stop and actually think about, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's really interesting.
It was cool.
Yeah.
She had this whole outline of like 5 different practices for each.
Oh my gosh, especially, all of the meditation and the journaling and
yeah.
And even on that point, you said, when people are on their cycle, meaning menstruation, but the cycle is actually the whole month cycle, and menstruation is just one part of it. It's just one phase. Whereas we kind of all grew up thinking like, oh, your woman's cycle is just the period, but it's the whole month. And the whole month is gearing you up for that, or gearing you up for ovulation, really, and then it moves into that. So it's just really great to see people not just focusing on that week of menstruation. It's actually, how can I look after myself the rest of the month? And so it's really interesting. Even people still talk about it kind of like as if it's just that week. Whereas even the biggest thing I learned from getting really deep into cycle thinking is the week before you start a new cycle is actually when you need to be looking after yourself as well. And actually even more. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, cool.
Anyway,
Amazing.
get a little bit pumped up because it's just like measured just bulldozing through doesn't help anyone, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I know as men, there are times where I feel like I'm just bulldozing as well.
Yeah,
And I
yeah.
don't know if that's necessarily our hormonal cycles. I know we do have cycles, and apparently they're kind of longer. They're like kind of more like a 3-month sort of cycle.
Mm,
And that seems to align with what I feel.
yeah,
Like I
yeah.
just notice that there are periods where it's just like, well,
And
just
sometimes you want to kill it and
yeah.
you mentally clear, you just, and you got to, so again, it's just leaning in when that feels good and listening to your body. And there's usually a reason why you need to take a step back, right?
Yeah.
And other steps.
Laura's so good. And thank you so much for coming down here. And
Oh my
I think
gosh.
this is retreat number 6.
It's retreat number 6. Yeah. I think, yeah, it was on the bucket list. And when I got asked to take my first one, it was like a dream come true. And I've been doing 2 a year. So
It's such a great fit. And it's always such a joy to have you here and to have your support, not only of the guests, but of like the community and
thank you.
everything that you give to us. So,
And it's so great to, get away and do our big trip. And then this has been a nice ease back into New Zealand life,
yeah.
It's coming to the best week ever. Have a bit of a reset.
Yeah, cool.
Mm.
For those listening, I'll put some more details about Laura in the show notes. And thanks again for taking some time.
Oh, you're so welcome.
All right.
Thanks, Damian.
Ciao.